tonight's Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee. If I can just run through some housekeeping before we start. So can I remind everyone present that this meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording is being archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, can they please raise their hand in person if sat in the chamber, or use the remote raise hand function. If a participant raises their hand via the remote function and is not subsequently invited to speak by me as chair, please could they turn their camera on to indicate, or just place a message in the chat function. When invited to address the committee, please could all participants ensure that their microphone and camera is on to ensure that they can be seen and heard when actively participating. If this isn't possible for any reason, please let myself or Democratic Service Officer know as soon as possible. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues or to get my attention or the attention of a Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they're addressing the committee, again, please let myself or an officer know. So, please can I welcome all committee and non-committee elected members, cabinet members, our officers, and also to anyone who's watching the live meeting broadcast. Moving straight onto the agenda and beginning with agenda item 1, and apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies, please?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Iannucci and Councillor William have provided their apologies in advance of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now on to the minutes of the previous meeting from the 13th of February. Are members happy with those minutes? If so, I move them, and can I ask for a seconder, please? Councillor Hooper, thank you. And moving on to, Councillor Charles Champion, did you want to come in at that point?
No, I was just trying to second. Thank you.
And moving on to declarations of interest, are there any, please? No. So, agenda item 4, this is Highways Maintenance Inspection Regime Report. It's a reference from Cabinet, and committee will be aware from the papers that the report proposes changes to the footway and carriageway inspection regime, which increase the number of inspections on some of the Vales roads. And it's before us tonight for members' consideration. So, Nathan Thomas is joining us to take us through the report, and I believe you've got a short presentation for us, Nathan, so over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a very brief presentation, which I'll, if you could connect, please, and share with the audience. It's only 8 slides, and what I've tried to do, I've tried to capture the main points of the report, and then I'll open it up at the end then for discussion. Okay, so this is the Cabinet report for Highway Maintenance Inspection Regime. I've included a couple of photographs of the officers of from the team as well. Okay, so the introduction. The Council has a statutory duty to maintain the highway, a public expense under Section 41 of the Highways Act of 1980. This report seeks approval from Cabinet to make amendments to the Council's network hierarchy, inspection regime and repair regime following on from a review. The report proposes the Highway Maintenance Manual for 2024, which is Appendix 1, supersedes the Highway Safety Manual of 2014, which is Appendix 2. I think lots of people may be interested in why we're considering making these amendments. And I think the most important thing is ultimately we listen to our stakeholders when they say that the report is outdated, it's from 2014, and it's an opportunity to ensure that our hierarchy is current, and that we do listen to our stakeholders and we do consider development of the Vale and future growth, really. So the Cabinet agrees in principle to adopt the national standard. This is what we're seeking. The Cabinet agrees in principle to adopt the national standard of main and secondary distributor roads and to align our inspection regime with our neighbouring authorities in Cardiff and Bridgend. I just want to note really that the County Surveyor Society, which sort of contribute towards the 22 Welsh authorities, they recommended that all of these 22 authorities reviewed their inspection regime and implemented changes a good few years ago. Cardiff have recently done it, Bridgend have, I believe, done it about a year or two ago. So we really need to follow suit to align with our neighbouring authorities. The background. So this was first initiated by the council back in 2019. However, the highway maintenance team were a very small team and we weren't quite suitably resourced to carry out the review process. I was successfully appointed in April of 2020, and then I met with the County Surveyor Societies and officers of the highway maintenance team to go through the review. Believe it or not, we've got 2,590 unique street reference numbers. So to try and put that into maybe some sort of perspective, if I use Quarry Road in Wenvo as an example, that is one USRN, whereas Holton Road in Barry may be made up of 3 or 4 unique street reference numbers. And sometimes one location, such as Holton Road, is not just one USRN. So it's quite a lengthy process to go through. The individuals that we went through the review process with, they were well-established Vale of Glamorgan employees. They know the network very well. They've time served. They've been here for a long time. So I think it was key to involve them within the review process. Following on from the review, it sort of highlighted that we had really good control already in place. Lots of things didn't jump out to us as glaringly incorrect, but there were a couple of minor changes which we sort of identified. We actually identified 61 changes, and this is what we're proposing today, with 59 of them actually increasing inspection and only 2 decreasing in inspection. And that was really because they were probably incorrectly identified previously. The review considered the classification of road types, speed limits, traffic flow data, pedestrian footfall, for example, and whether it was in an urban or a rural setting. As you're all well aware, there's lots of the Vale network is surrounded by agricultural activities, and that does have a contributing factor on the vehicle traffics and the flows in some respects. We also looked at tourist destinations, for example, Penarth Esplanade or Barry Island or even Ogmore Beach. They're very busy areas in the summer, so we have to consider passing vehicles. Okay, why is it important to review the highway maintenance inspection regime? Firstly, it's been 10 years since the last review. We needed to demonstrate to our stakeholders, including magistrate courts, that we listen when they reference the 2014 manual and that it is outdated. Within my remit of responsibility, I have to attend court for our Section 58 defence, whether that be third-party claims or personal injury claims. And very often the magistrates will say to us, well, why haven't you reviewed it for a long time? So I think it's really important that we've finally gone through this process. And we're comfortable that we've done a good review and the inspections that are in place are fit for purpose. We also took the opportunity to build tolerances into the inspection regime to accommodate absences. As you can imagine, I've got 5 highway inspectors within the team, and not only do they have annual leave requests, but every now and then they're absent from work for various reasons. And also, we live in Wales, we have lots of periods of heavy rain and sometimes snow. For example, if we have 3 or 4 weeks of heavy rain, the contractor can't always complete the work within the appropriate timescales because very often some of these parts of the network can be underwater. So it's important that we sort of consider this as part of the review. We're also proposing within the Cabinet report the standardisation of carriageway and footway types by their reference titles, and that is simply referred in moving away from Cat 1, Cat 2 and moving over to this more simplified version of CH1, CH2s. It's simply the labelling of the carriageway types, and that applies then for footways also. So that is footway Cat 1, Cat 2s up to number 4, and then we're just simplifying that down to FH 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and that is within the Appendix 4 within the report. Okay, inspection frequencies. The review process considered the existing inspection intervals compared against the County Surveyor Society recommended minimum frequencies. And you'll see within the table there, which is Appendix 5, very often we met the County Surveyor Society minimum standard, but in some instances we actually exceeded that. So we were actually undertaking more inspections than some other authorities, but also we were exceeding our standards in comparison to the minimums, which I think is a nice thing. I take a lot of pride in my role, and I think it's nice that we go with that little bit extra. Okay. There's no changes for response times for carriageway and footway defects, and they remain exactly the same. So our critical defects are responded to within 2 hours. Our safety defects is a 24-hour response, and our maintenance defect are 15 working days. We've made no changes to the defect dimensions, albeit we did consider it. Our current intervention criteria for defects in the footway are 20 mil, and in the carriageway they're 40 mil. We did look at increasing some of those intervention levels and maybe go to 50 mil in the carriageway. The difficulty is none of our neighbouring authorities have made those changes. So from an insurance perspective, our insurers would be slightly nervous if we were looking to sort of lower our standards. So we've looked to keep all of those exactly the same. The review highlighted the council exceed the County Surveyors Society Wales minimum standard for carriageway and footway defects. However, this aligns with our neighbouring authorities, Cardiff and Regeneration Council, and that is Appendix 6 within the report. And then finally, that was the end of the presentation, and I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Nathan. Are there any questions or comments, please? Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Nathan, for your presentation. That was really interesting, and I think very supportive of the work that you've done here. Just got three questions. One, be interested in the cost implications. It looks like we're doing more, and obviously the environment that we're in at the moment, the opportunity to do more is not often something that we're looking to do. Be interested in that. This committee, a few committee meetings ago, recommended that we take consideration of cyclists, and I just wonder how they are affected by this. And the last point you've used comparators with neighbouring authorities. We have another neighbouring authority, RCT. How do they differ, or are they in the same regime as we are? Thank you.
Nathan, do you want to come back in on those, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Firstly, cost implications. I suppose in some respects you could say that we're inspecting more often, so we potentially may identify more defects. Or I think for me, it's the opportunity to identify them before they get to the point where they're actionable. And very often the highway inspector can then just monitor them slowly. There are only 59 that we're proposing to increase, and that's increasing them from 6 monthly inspections to 3 monthly. So I'd like to think that there won't be huge cost implications. Secondly, cyclists. We are mindful of cyclists. We very regularly liaise with our active travel officer. Likewise for them resurfacing sites when we're looking to, the highway inspector suggests sites that we're looking for resurfacing, as well as listening to our stakeholders and elected members when they suggest sites which they think the carriageway is of a shocking condition and has deteriorated beyond patching. We do look for cyclists. We're obviously liaising with active travel officers for new schemes when they're coming in, being proposed maybe in some respects, depending on budgets. So I suppose the review process, we're always mindful of cyclists because we're keen to encourage active travel within the organisation. So I hope that does that answer your question in some respects?
Just the point about RCT and the other neighbouring authority.
I just wanted to check I was hit the box with active travel first. Rhondda and Taff actually aligned with Cardiff Council, Bridgend and ourselves. So our intervention levels remain the same. So that's 20 mil in the footway, 40 mil in the carriageway. I think Cardiff Council have got, they're the only authority in Wales that actually do a weekly inspection, and that's Queen Street. It's right in the middle of the city centre. But we all align. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Nathan. Councillor Prothero, please.
Thank you very much, Nathan. I think this is a positive move, as you've said. You know, it hasn't been reviewed for 10 years, so it was overdue. It's got to be better, going from 6 to 3 months for quite a few of your inspections. So I do see that as positive. I've only got really very positive comments to make from my experience. We in the rural Vale, as you well know, we suffer quite a lot with flooding, as does everybody, but with potholes that literally pop up overnight, and there's very little that you can do about it. So what I would like to ask is if we can find a way to make it easier for people to report. I know going through the C1V, but it is quite lengthy, the procedure, the forms, and I think I want to try and find a way to encourage it somehow more, so that we can make sure that anybody who does report finds it easier to do so, and gets a really positive response from us for doing so as well. But thank you and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Councillor. Nathan, before I bring you in, I can see a Cabinet member has joined us, Councillor Mark Wilson. Is committee happy for me to bring Councillor Wilson in, because I suspect he wants to address the issue raised by Councillor Prothero? Yes, thank you. Please go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
And thank you very much. Excellent presentation there. Just a couple of things. I mean, I'm really pleased that we are improving the inspection regime on many of these major roads, and it's very much needed. And also, it's in many ways, it's a way of saving money in some respects, because, as you rightly say, if we can find something and see the defective earlier, it will save a lot more money than if we see it later on. And the other thing is, in response to Councillor Prothero's point, there is an app, the C1V app, where you can actually take pictures of potholes and send it through. And I've done this on many occasions. And by all means, please use it while you're on around and you see a big pothole, take a picture of it, send it through. If you don't get anywhere, by all means, please report it to myself or to any of our officers. And I'm sure most of you by now know who they are. Please do so. But again, more proactive we are on this, the more the problems won't get worse. They will get notified and they will get sorted in the order. But obviously, we've got to bear in mind the depth of them and the severity of them are factors when we look at repairing them. But by all means, please do so.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't know whether you want to add anything to that, Nathan. I had a related question, which is, if we're moving to more frequent inspections in some areas on some roads, does that have any implications for response time in terms of ad hoc reporting? So members of the public simply doing as Councillor Wilson has suggested and sending in an issue. So does it have any implications for that side of the regime?
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I would say no, it doesn't have any major complications. We are suitably resourced and we can react to it. We've got a reliable contractor. We also have an out-of-hours function, so even if it's late in the afternoon or early evening, it's not a problem. I think generally, from a reporting perspective, and this might capture some of Councillor Prothero's query, even if it's out of hours, we've got an out-of-hours service which the authority provide. Off the back of that, we've got an out-of-hours rota, so we've got sufficient resources that we can capture anything, really. I'm quite comfortable.
Thank you. It's very good to hear. Councillor Perry, please.
Hi, can you hear me or even see me? Hang on, is it all working?
Yes,
Here we go.
we can
Yes,
hear you and see you.
Good evening. Yeah, so we're going to do more inspections, and as Nathan knows, I'm out and about inspecting the roads in my ward on at least a weekly basis already, and finding new potholes when I go back that weren't there the week before. And Glencarvan Community Council in particular are rather upset by the state of the road. We're going to be doing more inspections, but are we going to be clearing the backlog of potholes? And yes, we might be able to intervene earlier if we see them earlier, and that makes sure they don't deteriorate any further. But there's as we all know, a lack of financing for the resurfacing that we need to actually stop these potholes forming and then reforming. And what we often have is belatedly patches on top of patches on top of patches on top of patches. And I'm thinking about Pound Cross in particular here, where it's incredibly bumpy surface, which generates more potholes because there's no money to actually resurface it. And then around Moulton, I don't know why Welsh Water will bother filling in their latest trench, because the trench would just grit and soil would actually improve the surface than what we've got there now at the moment. So just wondering if Nathan could comment on those and if he can suggest any ways that we can help him with his role.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I think we're going to receive some information in the next quarterly finance monitoring reports, which are before us tonight, which talk about the significant budgetary pressures arising from highway maintenance and potholes, and certainly the weather that we've had over recent months, I'm sure won't have helped with that. But Nathan, if you can comment on that question about whether or not changes to the inspection regime are likely to result in more repairs being done, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Perry. A couple of points, really. I think Councillor Perry's got a very difficult area in some respects because it's the rural Vale. We are very sparse with our highway surface water assets, so we rely heavily on verges with open channels and grips. We also have to deal with contributing factors such as surface water runoff from agricultural plots and land. So it is a very challenging area. Likewise as well, the formation of the highway is not, this is historic. They were never designed and intended for the use that they have these days. So we are, without serious investment, we're just putting a plaster over it. And I think that's no different from many other authorities in some respects without a lack of serious investment. Just to pick up on Councillor Perry's query, we have got, I wouldn't say we've got a backlog, we have got works in order, works in hand in some respects. We've currently got 600 outstanding defects, and that's the whole of the Vale. But to put that in comparison to last year, this time last year, we had over 1,200 defects. And that's purely because we had 2 weeks of heavy rain followed by 2 weeks of frost. So the highway just deteriorated at a far greater pace. I think this year, we were talking about it just before the meeting started, it's a lot milder in some respects, but we have had a persistent 3 weeks of heavy rain. And that does have devastating factors on the rural Vale in some respects.
Thank you. Did you want to come back in on that, Councillor Perry?
Yeah, just to add very quickly a couple more points. Mentioned earlier was the app, and I loathe that app, and I've given up on the app. So thank you to the team for accepting my emails with the what 3 words as to where they are, which I'm using quite a bit. And perhaps we can get a new app and one that actually links into our own systems better and is much more user friendly. Perhaps I'm getting a bit old now, but I find it very, very user unfriendly. And also, do we have Nathan can answer this one maybe. We have a lot of gullies, and some seem to get cleaned more often than the other ones. And you'll see the gully tanker going by, and I know we've got a couple of gully tankers in order. I'm not sure if they've arrived yet, but they go past certain gullies that are blocked, and they go and clean one which is still working. Is there any way of improving that and actually knowing how many gullies we have, and when they were last cleaned? And also grips, and how can we ensure that the grips are more regularly maintained? And is that the responsibility of the landowner, or is it the responsibility of the highway authority? And there are other ways that town and community councils can perhaps contribute to identifying problems with drainage, with blockages. I may be clearing them a little bit. I'm not going to say I've been clear anymore.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Are you able to respond to those, Nathan? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Perry. First things first, I think What 3 Words is a fantastic app. I've never used it until I joined the Vale of Glamorgan Council 4 years ago, and I find it fantastic, especially in the rural Vale. We'll have lots of people log service requests with us through various means, whether it be their own customer portal or whether they contact the contact centre. But when they're trying to sort of describe a defect in the carriageway, whether that be a block gully or a pothole that they're commonly referred to, if they're trying to give a geographical description such as 300 metres from the junction of, just makes it a little bit more challenging, whereas What 3 Words is brilliant. It splits the UK up into a 3-metre grid, and I'm definitely a converter. So thank you, and I do appreciate when you send me information. What 3 Words is very useful for us as a team. To pick up on the point about the gullies and the gully tanker, we have got a regime where we go and we cleanse every highway surface water asset. That generally the intervals range between 12 months and 15 months, depending on where they are. We have just completed 4,000 gullies on the strategic routes, so they are our main arteries of the Vale of Glamorgan. We did have to use an external contractor for that work. There was budget allocation for it, but we've had to use an external contractor simply because we're overwhelmed with work. We've got a record of 21,000 gullies, and we're aware that it's slightly more than 21,000. We have got records I think, as with every organisation, the records are not always the most accurate, but we are working through them slowly. And it's high on my agenda to get those records updated. Just to pick up on what Ian said there about the gully tankers, we have got one new one, which is fantastic. The operatives are very grateful to have new machinery. Our 2 gully tankers were 14 and 15 years old, so they operational vehicle. They are out every day, and they were quite regularly in and out of the garage, as you would expect with an aging vehicle in some respects. So one has turned up. That came a couple of weeks ago, and we've got another one which is due imminently, which is good. And then finally, this highway surface water grips. So these are the open channels in the soft verges. Anything that was within the private boundaries, so that's the other side of the hedge, they're maintained by the landowners. But anything that forms part of the adopted highway, that doesn't just have to be the metal surface of the highway, that can be the verges as well. If it's the adopted highway, then we maintain those verges.
Thank you, Nathan. Really interesting, comprehensive responses to the issues being raised. Are there any other queries or questions from committee members? No, I see no hands. So thank you, Nathan. I think in terms of the recommendations that are before committee, if committee will agree, I think there is one recommendation that we will refer back to Cabinet, and that's the point that's been made for Cabinet to consider ways to improve the reporting process to make it easier for people. I confess I'm one of those people that sometimes struggles with the app, so I think there probably is room to look at how we can make that easier for members of the public. Is committee happy for us to take forward that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Councillor Perry, are you wanting to add to that or agree with it?
I was just going to say yes, but obviously you can't see me put my hand up here.
No, that's fine. We can hear you, Councillor Perry, so thank you. We will refer that recommendation back to Cabinet, but otherwise I move the report. Cabinet's happy that we note it with the addition of that recommendation. Thank you very much, Councillor Hooper. So thank you, Nathan, and thank you to you and your team for all the work that you're doing to address the challenges that we recognise there are in terms of making sure that our roads continue to be safe and usable. So we're very grateful to you. And thank you for your presentation tonight at committee. You're very welcome to stay for the rest of the committee meeting, but equally, if you want to get on with your evening, you're very welcome to leave us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nathan. So, committee, we move on to agenda item 5, which is the Q3 revenue monitoring report for 23 to 24. This report is before us for noting. We're also asked to note a number of environments that are relevant to this committee. And as I've already referenced, following on from the previous report, committee will no doubt have noted the cost of highway patching and potholes remains a significant pressure for the council, along with the challenge of securing HGV driver capacity. Gemma Jones is here to take us through the report. So thank you, Gemma. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. And just a few slides on the report, just to clarify, there are no relevant environments for this scrutiny committee. So in terms of the key headlines of the kind of overall position, I think we're continuing to see continued and sustained pressures across social care, but also persistent pressures in the areas of road maintenance and school transport, and really timely having had that presentation by Nathan today. Some of the pressure in respect to school transport has been addressed as part of the 24-25 budget proposals. And obviously, as members will be aware, there is some additional resurfacing funding as part of the 24-25 capital programme, but not additional funding for the revenue pressure. So pressures being reported also across services in respect of unrealised savings and income. And the overall position reflects unplanned use of reserves of 6.9 million in 23-24, plus a further 6.7 million of school balances. And there is unplanned use of reserves across both the Place Directorate and Environment and Housing, which we'll be coming on when we look at the scrutiny specific position. There are a number of environments, but they're largely looking at reallocating provision for energy costs and aligning budgets within directorates. So in terms of the the position relevant to this scrutiny committee. So in terms of neighbourhood services and transport, we have an adverse variance of 1,050,000. Apologies, that's incorrect on that slide. So in terms of key pressures, highways patching and potholes. So we have a projected overspend of 1.3 million staffing budget. So that's been persistent throughout the year in terms of market forces payments to HGV drivers. That's been offset in year by a one-off rebate from rates because a number of rates charges have been appealed during the course of the financial year. There are some costs around dash dieback, but they will be funded from the reserve, although it should be noted that that reserve is rapidly running out. So there will be very limited funding available for 24-25. There is some unplanned drawdown from neighbourhood services reserves of 300,000, and some of that overspend is also being offset by the policy underspend that's reported as part of this report as well. In terms of place, there are some adverse variances, and these are largely in respect of savings that haven't been identified in full during the financial year. So some of the key pressures are around the Vale Enterprise Centre and the proposed closure of buildings and also planning fee income. There is a significant drawdown proposed from reserves, but that's largely around project work and delivering grant schemes, and that's set out within the report. There is drawdown from the place reserve to offset, and that's largely an overspend in the private housing budget, so sits outside of this scrutiny committee remit. In terms of efficiencies, we've got a real mix in terms of the savings position for this scrutiny area. So some savings have achieved in part, but they expect to be achieved in full in 24-25. So in terms of some of the waste savings, some savings have not been progressed but are mitigated by other income. So, for instance, the grass cutting savings being mitigated by enforcement income. Some of these proposals will be picked up alongside 24-25 savings proposals, so such as the car parking proposals, or have been dependent on broader policy change or review in year but are expected to be achieved in full in 24-25. Savings that haven't been achieved as at the 31st of March 2024 will need to be monitored during 24-25 alongside savings proposals for 24-25 and cost pressures that haven't been awarded. So we'll have a significant number of lines to monitor in 24-25. And then also the reserves position is set out within the report, setting out that unplanned use of reserves, which of course cannot be continued in 24-25. Okay, happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you very much, Gemma, for a really helpful presentation taking us through that. Are there any questions or comments from members, please? I see no hands, so I would move the report, and can I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. So we move on to agenda item 6, capital monitoring for the period the 1st of April to the 31st of December 2023. Again, this report includes a number of recommendations for committee to note, and I think you're taking us through this as well. Thank you, Gemma.
Thank you very much. So again, just a few slides to share on this report. So whilst the approved programme stood at just under 104 million, our forecast outturn is just short of 97 million, and spend at the end of December was around 48 million. There are a number of requests as part of this report. So there is a respect, which I know that we've discussed in Scrutiny Committee before, to remove the new Household Waste Recycling Centre budget from the capital programme. But just to note that the Council continues to explore options for replacement Household Waste Recycling Centre at Landau, which is spelled incorrectly, apologies, but despite ongoing investigations, there are no immediate options available. So there is an interim measure that's being proposed, and the service area is liaising with the landlord's representative to either identify the existing site and to upgrade the road and secure a lease for the near future. In terms of further requests that fall within the Scrutiny Committee, there are a number of requests, and some of those relate to tidying up around the Shared Prosperity Grant Scheme. We do have a number of slippage requests, which is typical at this point in the financial year. So there are 8 requests into the Environment and Housing slippage section. So, and I just tried to note the reason for that request on this slide. So there are some slippage requested in terms of highway improvement, but that's in part due to procurement, but also we've discussed previously around the timing of those works, and typically we would prefer to deliver those schemes when the weather improves. We have some slippage around the retaining wall at Windsor Road, and that's reflecting the fact that much of those works will progress in 24-25. Landmise construction, and then also review with the alterations of parking permit schemes and residential parking scheme and permits. So that's linked to the review that's currently being undertaken. So that's being requested to be slipped in 24-25. Dimming of street lighting and fitting of LED lanterns. So that's to enable the suitability review to complete. Boverton retaining wall to allow the consultation to complete, and also there's a request related to the Shared Prosperity Fund for electric bikes, and that's because of a need to identify a new contractor. And then in terms of the slippage request within the remit of the Scrutiny Committee in the Place Directorate, Barry Regeneration Partnership, and that's to align the funding with other sources, and that funding is also being renamed. The Restore the Thaw scheme, and that's because there was a significant delay on commencing the scheme. Relating to the Business Service Centre because of delays in respect to planning and SAB. ANPR scheme at Country Parks because there were some complications around software and the host authority, although we are endeavouring to place the order in this financial year. The 5th request was for Cowbridge Livestock Market because there is a need to further review the scope of works, and also a request relating to Country Park toilets because of a need to redraft the tender. And there are also a couple of delegated authority requests within the remit of the Scrutiny Committee. So the inclusion of a new scheme for benches and bins on Dinas Powys Common, and a replacement bus shelter at Cosmoston Lakes Country Park. Those are the main points, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Gemma. Again, are there any questions or comments from anyone in relation to the capital monitoring report? No, I see no hands. So, sorry. I beg your pardon, Councillor Prothero.
Thank
Please
you,
go
Chair.
ahead.
Thanks ever so much. I just wanted to ask, if possible, for timelines. It's very unfortunate that we haven't been able to locate a site for the recycling centre at Landau. Appreciate how difficult it's been and how many years of attempts there have been made here. And I understand now that we are accepting that we are going to work on the access road, which is so in need of doing. So I'm asking if we have timelines for this yet, because there are tens of thousands of people on the western side of the Vale who would really like to be able to access their recycling centre. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prothero. I also wanted to ask about timescales for retendering the bike scheme. I suspect, Gemma, that those are not questions that you're able to answer, but I can see Emma Reid has joined us. So, Emma, do you want to come in on those two issues?
Yes, please,
Thank you.
Chair. Thank you. Good evening, committee. Yeah, just to take the first question for Councillor Prothero to do with Landau. There is a report due to go to the 21st of March Cabinet, which will outline the permissions needed for the improvements to the Landau recycling centre. So hopefully that should answer questions when that goes live. Councillor Prothero, but I'm happy to discuss informally with you what that report says if you haven't had a chance to see that report at the moment. In terms of the bike scheme, as people know, Next Bikes pulled out of the bike scheme, both in Cardiff and the Vale of Glamorgan, unfortunately, recently. So we, at the moment, are looking to have some work done with Cardiff to see what the feasibility might be of having a new bike scheme or a different bike scheme. That work is in progression with Cardiff, and I would hope we would have more information on the possibilities of a new scheme later in the summer. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Emma. You're really breaking up during that response. I'm conscious that you're going to be reporting, presenting the next agenda item. I don't know whether there's anything you're able to do your end to address that, or whether you want to try leaving and rejoining. We could understand you, but it was very broken up. But thank you for those responses. Councillor Ian Perry, please.
Hi, good again. Just to put something in Emma's mind, perhaps, and that is some years ago now, I worked with the Bellio, and we brought OV Fiets, which isn't bike sharing, but it's called the Public Transport Bicycles, a Dutch scheme, which would actually solve many of the problems that Next Bike experienced in having bicycles out on the street that get stolen. So OV Fiets, the Public Transport Bicycle Scheme, you get the bicycles from manned stations or special places that are not in the street where the bicycles that have been vandalised and stolen were stored. So that's something that Cardiff and the Vale Glamorgan Council should be looking at, rather than putting more bicycles in the street and trying the same thing over and over again, getting the same result. I hope you find that helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. I'm not sure if Emma is still on the call, actually. I'm not sure whether she's picked that up, but perhaps you'd like to contact her outside of committee meeting just to make sure that that point is addressed. Thank you.
I'll ping an email now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Any comments or issues from anyone else? Then just to remind committee of the recommendations, there are 4 before us tonight: that the progress made on delivering the 23-24 capital programme within the remit of the committee is noted, that the use of delegated authority within the remit of the committee is noted, that the use of emergency powers within the remit of the committee is noted, and that the changes to the 23-24 capital programme and future years capital programme within the remit of the committee is noted. And I move those recommendations en bloc. Thank you, Councillor Hooper, for seconding them. Gemma, thank you for taking us through both of those reports. Again, you're very welcome to stay for the rest of committee meeting, but do feel free to leave us and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you. And we move on to agenda item 7, Annual Delivery Plan Monitoring Report, Q2 Performance 23-24. This report is for committee's consideration, with any recommendations being referred back to Cabinet. It sets out progress towards achieving the 2023-2024 Annual Delivery Plan, along with remedial action to address areas of underperformance. And I believe that we're being joined by Marcus and Emma, who are going to take us through it. I'm not sure who's starting. Hello, Marcus. Welcome to committee, and over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and hopefully you can all hear me. So if I really quickly run through this report for you, committee, the performance report presents our progress against, or presents our progress at Q3, which is 1st of April 2023 through to 31st of December 2023, towards achieving our annual delivery plan commitments. The presentation of Appendix A outlines our performance for the period. I don't intend displaying the presentation unless anyone wants to. It is included in the report. And what I intend doing is, as I come on to the presentation, is to pick out some highlights from that, and then obviously open it to questions from the committee if they have anything about any of those items in that presentation. So the presentation will provide members with an overview of our achievements specific to each scrutiny committee's remits across all the 4 wellbeing objectives, and it provides an overview of areas for improvement, emerging areas of development and activity, and emerging areas of concerns which are specific to the committee's remit. Upon consideration, Scrutiny Committee is recommended to refer their views and any recommendations to Cabinet for their consideration. So moving on to Appendix A, and the first page deals with what we've achieved, and just quickly going through this in terms of Objective 1, work with and for our communities. I'm sure members will be aware that we've engaged with a range of organisations on the preferred strategy for the replacement local development plan. We've also been doing work engaging with some of our most deprived communities of Buttrells and Gibbonsdown and Court wards as part of a wider community connection programme. We've engaged with the local nature partnership and our volunteer groups. We've identified further efficiency savings across waste, and we've engaged with landlords to increase recycling participation. So those are a few that we've undertaken under Objective 1. Under Objective 2, supporting learning, employment and sustainable economic growth. Members, I'm sure, will be aware that our bid for UK government funding towards regeneration of Barry waterfront, known as Barry Making Waves, was approved as was approved as part of round 3 announcements. An award of nearly £20 million was made for over 10 years as part of a substantial funding towards the improvement of the town centre of Barry. We've also supported businesses through projects and advice and grant funding via the new Business Development Grant Scheme, which is being provided via the Shared Prosperity Fund. We have been supporting a number of projects through our project management unit, including the Western Gateway Scheme, the Waterfront Campus and Innovation Quarter and Airport Campus, which is part of the Cardiff and Vale Colleges Growth Scheme. We've also got Land to the North of the Railway at Barry Docks, projects alongside social services, and of course the Barry Making Waves Levelling Up project. Following the launch of the Business Development Scheme, a number of applications are being received for the Business Development Grant, which I referred to, which are specifically focused on decarbonisation of those businesses. And we are progressing placemaking plans in Barry and Cowbridge, informed by community mapping and detailed assessments of the needs and opportunities of those communities. So those are just a few headlines of what we've undertaken and what we've achieved. What I intend to do is go through all of this with picking out a few headlines, but at the end, we'll be happy to take any questions. In terms of Objective 3, a couple of some key points there I picked out. Through Shared Prosperity Fund, we are supporting our residents and communities through the cost of living crisis by identifying community projects which are being supported. We have progressed active travel schemes for Barry to Dinas Powys and Surrey to Cosmoston, and the scheme at Roos is nearing completion. In terms of Objective 4, which is respect, enhance and enjoy our environment, we've strengthened the waste team with the recruitment of 3 new recycling officers. We've approved a new tree strategy subject to consultation. We have the first draft of the Green Infrastructure Strategy prepared for wider consultation in Q4. We've opened the Barry Reuse Shop at Atlantic Trading Estate. We are progressing a local area energy plan alongside a consultant appointed by Cardiff Capital Region. And we've successfully secured high-value contracts for recycling material, and the new Rights of Way improvement plan has been produced and will be presented for approval to Cabinet, hopefully in March or April of this year. So, areas for improvement in our service plan activity. Do you want to take questions now?
Yes, if that's okay, Marcus.
Yes,
I think it'd be helpful just to break this up a little bit, because there's a lot.
Certainly.
a lot to think about. So just in relation to the achievements that Marcus has run through, or anything else you've seen that's relevant to this report, are there any questions or comments on that section of the report? Councillor Hooper, please.
Thank you, Marcus, for the presentation. Just two questions from me. One, I wonder if you...
Forgive me, Councillor Hooper. Councillor Driscoll, could you switch your camera and your sound off, please? If you want to come in with a question next, by all means, do so.
Is my camera on, is it?
Your camera's off, but we can hear you. That's it. Lovely. Thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Hooper, please go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. And again, thanks, Marcus. Just two questions for me. One, I'd just be interested in if you could just talk a little bit more about the timescales associated with the Making Waves project, when the project needs, you expect it to start, complete, etc. And I'd also welcome just a little bit more detail on the new approach to the green infrastructure plan, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Marcus, are you happy to come back in on both those issues? Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Yes, no problem at all. In terms of Barry Making Waves, we will be reporting on progress towards that, achieving that in the coming months to Cabinet and obviously to Scrutiny. At the moment, one of the things that we're currently doing, although the award has been made, UK government has required us to answer a significant number of additional questions to actually access the funding itself. And we are in that sort of gateway process at the moment of responding to those questions. The last set of questions, I believe, were answered last week. And so while we aren't actually standing still, and we are carrying out work with partners, including ABP, Cardiff and Vale College, and the Ocean Water Sports Trust, that work can't progress at full speed until we have obviously received the final gateway approval of UK government. So once we have that, once we have our heads of terms agreed with our various partners, we will be coming back to Scrutiny and Cabinet with an update on that position. Regarding the Green Infrastructure Plan, a first draft has been produced by consultants that were appointed by the Council to carry out that work. Consultations will be undertaken, if they haven't already started, in the current quarter, leading into the next quarter, probably completing in early summer. Those consultations will then be fed back into the final draft of the plan, which will again be coming to this Scrutiny Committee and probably going on to and then going on to full Council for agreement. So probably with that would be in the second quarter of this year, half of this year, so late summer for final agreement, I would suggest.
Thank you, Marcus. Did you want to come back in on that, Councillor Hooper?
Thanks, Chair. I'm just interested in just digging into the extra timescales associated with the requirements from UK government, especially as the Welsh Secretary, I think his response was, when he was asked about this recently, he said the Vale Council have got the money, they need to just get on with it. I just wonder how much extra time has this put into the schemes? Thank you, Marcus.
Marcus, are you able to comment on that?
Thanks, Chair. Well, it's certainly adding extra time, and we've made that very point to UK government. We don't actually currently believe the scheme is deliverable within the timescale set by UK government because of these delays that have been set, and we are in discussions with UK government around what the deadline should be and what the deadline should be moved to. That being said, those discussions have been fairly positive. And I think there is an understanding that the way UK government have required additional information and the additional timeline, additional growth in the timeline by virtue of that is recognised. And this is not a problem that is sort of singly appointed to the Vale Council. I know colleagues in East Patolva and other councils who've received funding through round 3 who are in exactly the same position and are making exactly the same points. And I think this is why UK government are looking at that end date, if you like, and realise that the schemes are not going to be deliverable within that timescale. Certainly, £20 million schemes are not going to be deliverable in that timescale. I think any comments about you had the money, it's fair to say, no, we haven't had the money. We don't have the money. We won't get any money until that gateway process is finalised. And I think that might be a misunderstanding of where we currently are. But certainly we will be working, we continue to work, and we will be working very hard to ensure that the scheme does come to fruition. We are positively hopeful that the end date that was originally suggested of end of March 2026 will be extended.
Thank you, Marcus. Really, really important and helpful clarification, because I think many local residents may well, following those comments, have assumed that we do have the money and wondering why we're not getting on with it. So really helpful to understand where the delays and challenges actually rest, and also helpful to hear that you're optimistic that a more flexible approach will be taken to delivery, although obviously residents will want to see that as soon as possible. Councillor Driscoll, I don't know whether you wanted to come in on this. You don't have your hand up, but I just wanted to check. Did you want to? Yes, please do come in, Councillor Driscoll.
Yeah, it's only a point, actually. I have to declare an interest in something that Marcus said. I'm a director of a company that has applied for a business grant from the Business Development Fund. So I won't be taking any, if he does bring it back up, I won't be taking part in any of the discussions, okay? And I'll speak to Gareth afterwards about that. Thank you.
I think we probably need clarification from Democratic Services in relation to that declaration, Councillor. So, Gareth, can I ask you to come in on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just checking, Councillor Driscoll, obviously, if it's a prejudicial interest, you will need to leave the meeting. So it depends on what you think the actual. If so, you've had a grant accepted, is it?
That's correct. Yes.
Well,
if it's to make it, I didn't realise it was going to come up actually. So I'll leave the meeting. It's not an issue.
Oh, okay. Sorry, did Marcus want to come back?
Just to say, obviously that was referred to as a wider grant scheme, not referring to any specifics, and I won't be referring to any specific grants boards. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, and the fact we're not considering the grant as such, it probably means Councillor Driscoll's okay to remain. But if we have a vote, then we'll probably have to consider the matter further.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson, did you want to come in on any of those issues? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just going to make something that Marcus referred to, and that was the reuse shop. As you know, this research, I was delighted to officially open it last Friday, and I would urge all members and members of the public to visit the shop. It's open 6 days a week. The only day it's not open is on Monday, but the other days, please go. It's brilliant, and also please donate to the MFIS Foundation, which run the shop, and they got some terrific helpers. And I just thought I'd like to celebrate the fact that I went there, and it was a really good thing, and it's a great initiative. So thank you all.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. And it might be something that members of the committee, if they haven't visited the shop, might be interested in. Perhaps we could organise a visit so that we could actually go and have a look at the shop and see that in action and understand what they're doing in terms of helping us with our recycling targets. So perhaps that's something we can pick up outside committee. And if we move on now to the next part of the report, Marcus, if that's okay with you, which is areas for improvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I won't go through all of these, so please, if members have got any questions at the end of this, please ask them whether I've referred to them or not. In terms of objective 1, we are continuing to lobby Welsh Government for yearly planning fee upgrades that reflect the actual cost of service provision and inflation. The last time planning fees were increased is about 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, actually, I think. And obviously the cost of processing those applications has increased significantly. We are progressing work on implementing a charging policy for the public to use all the new EV charging points at the council's offices, including the Civic and the Alps. In terms of Objective 2, we have seen a drop-off in the number of listed building applications determined within 8 weeks. This has largely been due to the fact that our delegation we had from CADU was removed when our last conservation officer left. We now have a new conservation officer, and we have applied to CADU to get that delegation back. Once we have that back, time scales for listed building determinations will significantly improve. In terms of Objective 3, just to reference that progress on implementing cycle and pedestrian facilities in accordance with the approved active travel maps progresses, and we've continued to work with stakeholders, housing associations, private landlords to improve recycling facilities to flats and apartments, and to encourage increased participation in recycling. And then finally, with regard to Objective 4, the final decision on funding is awaited from Welsh Government following technical queries on the land-based flood alleviation scheme. And we are finalising the biodiversity forward plan, but this has been delayed due to competing priorities and other service capacity issues. So I think I'll leave that one there. Has anyone got any questions about the areas for improvement on the service plan activities?
Thank you, Marcus. Any questions or comments from members, please? Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Chair. And I don't know whether Emma's still on the line, whether her signal's improved, but she probably can answer this one better. I asked a question, I think, at the last meeting about the speed of the EV chargers that are on Vale property, so the ones here and the ones at the Alps, because if they're very slow, we probably get very few people picking them up, frankly. So I'll be really interested, and I haven't had a response yet. So welcome that. Thank you.
I don't know whether Emma has been able to rejoin us. Gemma, you wanted to come in on this, thank you.
I absolutely don't know the answer, Councillor Hooper. Oh, and Emma's joined. I was just going to suggest I took it to the property team, but Emma might be able to answer.
Thank you, Emma.
Yes, thank you. Apologies, Councillor Hooper, if you haven't yet had a response. I have arranged for, each of the charges are different, so I have arranged for you to receive the actual wattage of each of the chargers across the Vale. So apologies if you haven't received that yet, but I'll chase that up for you tomorrow.
Thank you, Emma, and you're coming in loud and clear. So whatever you've done has obviously worked. So thank you for that. I don't see anybody else wanting to come in on this aspect of the report. So we'll move on to, we are on emerging areas of development and activity. Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, first again, Objective 1. We are continuing to share information about the government's community ownership fund, and there has been increased interest from our local communities around that. We are considering a joint project for a new supplier with Cardiff Council, which we've heard about already today, following the closure of the OVO bike scheme. We continue to work with passenger transport operators in the city region to increase bus service provision to meet demand. And obviously, as we've also referred to in November, UK Government Council advised that we've been awarded funding under the long-term plan for towns fund. With regard to Objective 2, some emerging areas are we are continue to support the recovery of our town centres as part of the placemaking work, and obviously the long-term plan for towns fund will also help with this, particularly with Barry, and we are continuing to progress work to align placemaking plans with destination management planning to maximise both the community and visitor economy benefits. With regard to Objective 3, we are progressing improvements to public conveniences at Ogmore Beach, Southern Down Beach and Nantwich Beach as part of a bid for funding which we received from Welsh Government. And finally, with regard to Objective 4, we're delivering upgrades to the gateway into Cosmoston, We are working with businesses to encourage behaviour change and support decarbonisation. And we are mainstreaming the green infrastructure strategy within council services and strengthening links with regional colleagues through a regional approach to green infrastructure, which will match up, if you like, and link into what other councils are doing close to us. And that's it for. That was it for emerging areas of activity. Yes.
Thank you, Marcus. Any questions or comments on this aspect of the report from anyone, please? No, I see no hands. So, Marcus, if you will just take us through the final part of the report, which is emerging areas of concern.
So, yes, absolutely, Chair. No problem. And in terms of objective one, obviously one of the key areas we're still having in terms of concern is attracting and retaining suitably qualified staff within a competitive market remains a challenge, as well as we have a significant ongoing skill shortage and supply and cost pressures associated with capital and other projects are becoming more challenging. In terms of objective two, setting up the long-term plan for Town's board, preparing a long-term plan to match into that, to actually access the funding, will be very resource intensive. It is already becoming very resource intensive, and it is an extremely tight timescale. We have a board, it requires that a board is set up by April the 1st, and that actually a long-term plan is produced by August the 1st. We have appointed consultants, just appointed consultants, who are going to help us take this process through. But I have to say it is yet again another very tightly controlled process from UK government, which obviously is competing with other very tight timescale projects. So hence why we are having to appoint consultants to help us with that. In terms of objective three, supporting people at home, there's been success of placemaking. The success of the placemaking plans remains dependent on support from communities, and we are endeavouring to keep those communities involved with that process. And then finally, objective four, maintaining this is a similar theme actually, maintaining the waste and recycling service with a competitive HGV driver market remains very challenging.
Yeah, thank you, Marcus. I wanted to ask a question actually about the town boards, because obviously that clearly is a very, very tight timescale. So I think you've said that consultants have been appointed to develop that, but we're just a few weeks away from that. And also wondering what's the role of relevant members on the town board? Will there be a role for them?
Chair, it's a very good question. There is a very and I can share that with you and all members actually of the committee, a very strict set of guidelines around membership of the board, which has been produced by UK government. And I have to say they are very reluctant to have more than a couple of councillors on that board itself, and that the board cannot be chaired by a local councillor. There are certain other requirements that have to be adhered to. So the local MP has to be on the board. There are other local representatives that have to be on there, including one from the police. But I will, if you like, I will share that guideline with you and the committee, and you can see that. In terms of where we are with the board itself, we have identified a number of local key players who could act as both members of the board and actually as chair. You will recall that we actually had a Barry placemaking board previously. It was associated with the previous Barry Making Waves work that we undertook. I won't identify the people obviously now because they haven't responded to discussions yet, but there are representatives who are currently on that board who we've looked at to act as possibly a chair. So we are a little bit further forward than perhaps I set out there. But we have appointed consultants known as PER Consulting, PER Consulting. They're actually a local firm who specialise in planning, regeneration and economic development, and who have extensive experience of working in England, in particular with Towns Fund projects and other very similar projects, and have helped set up similar boards right across the UK. So we have brought them on board to help us take this project forward. We hope to have a chair in place by April the 1st, and beyond that, a board established very quickly beyond that, and we will then be working with that board to present our long-term plan, which will obviously have to be agreed by UK government by 1st of August for us to actually access the fund. So yet again, there are a number of gateways we have to go through to actually get any of this money. We have been given a small amount of money, £50,000, to establish this project, which allows us to appoint consultants to help us lead. But that is where we currently are.
Thank you, Marcus. I understand the constraints. I'm sure elected members will some at least will share my views that, you know, we're here to represent the views of local residents. We know our communities well, so it's frustrating to hear that there's a very limited role for elected members in that process, but absolutely hear what you're saying, that that's not a decision that rests with the council. That's part of the framework that's been set by UK government. So we look forward to hearing how that progresses. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from anyone else? Councillor Hooper.
Just want to follow up on the chair's comments about the town board, and I think she's being rather polite, because I think there seems to be a situation when we're being told this is how you do it by UK government without any reflection of how our town works. And I think this is just, as with a lot of these things, it's a situation where we're being given the money as something to persuade local residents that things are happening when, frankly, they make it as difficult as possible to happen. I do have a specific question, Marcus, on it, and I'd be interested in the percentage of the funds that are being used for the consultancy, because this is actually an example of where we're not being able to use the money on the town itself, where because of the timescales, we're having to use it on other things because we can only get the resources through an outside consultancy. So I'm just interested if you can give an indication of the percentage of the funding that's going to this consultancy. Thank you.
Are you in a position to respond to that, Marcus?
What I can say is that we were given this seed funding, if you like, of £50,000. We don't envisage spending any more on consultants than that to help us set it up. The consultants won't be involved with it beyond setting the project up and setting the board in place and developing the long-term plan. Beyond that, we would be hoping to appoint a programme officer to help the board take the scheme forward, and that would be a programme officer employed by the council but answerable to the board itself. So that programme officer's salary, if you like, will come out of the fund. That will be a very small amount of the fund percentage-wise, much smaller than 1%. There are very strict requirements about how much we can, as a council, take out of the town fund itself, actually, in terms of taking it forward. If we get the board set up and in place by April, we will have access to a further £200,000 of funding outside of the actual award, which is to allow us to set the board up and run and manage that board for the first few years. So we are intending to use, if you like, the money has been separated that will be used for the board itself to actually deliver projects. That money's been separated from the money that's been identified to help run it. So I hope that's... Sorry, I clicked the wrong button. I hope that's clear.
Thank you, Marcus. Any comments or questions from anyone else, please? No, I see no hands. So thank you, Marcus, for taking us through the report. In terms of feedback to go back to Cabinet, I think it probably is just that final point that was made by Councillor Hooper, that the Scrutiny is concerned about the constraints in terms of the makeup of the town board. We understand that this is something which sits outside the council's remit, but nevertheless we would ask that Cabinet consider any opportunities that lie within their powers to continue to ensure that there is appropriate and wide-ranging representation on the town board. And I hope that committee will be happy with that viewpoint being fed back to council. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hooper. Being fed back to committee. Thank you, Councillor Hooper. In terms of the recommendations before us, then there are two that members consider. Quarter three, forgive me, when I introduced this, I said quarter two. That was an error. It's clearly quarter to three. Quarter three, that members consider quarter three performance results and progress towards achieving the annual delivery plan 23-24 commitments, and that members consider the remedial actions to be taken to address areas of underperformance and to tackle the key challenges identified within the remit of the committee. So other than that, one comment, which is going back to Cabinet, I move that we note the report. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. So we move on then to agenda item 8, service plans and performance targets to deliver the 2024-2025 annual delivery plan. This is our final report tonight, and it's for committee to review and endorse via recommendations to Cabinet. It sets out planned service activities, measures and performance targets that are relevant to this committee. And I believe, Marcus and Emma, you're going to be taking us through this. Thank you, Marcus.
Yes, apologies, you have to listen to me again. I'm sorry about that. But I'll try and get through this. And I know some members, and quite a few members, will have attended briefing sessions on this prior to the various scrutiny committees. So just to let you know, what I intend doing is very briefly running through the report and setting out what it is. I suspect you'll be glad I don't intend running through the 40-odd pages that follow with all the actions, but obviously Emma and I are available to answer any questions you may have about some of those actions from our service plans, which you may want to ask questions about. So without further ado, I shall get into it. You will be aware that all scrutiny committees considered the draft annual delivery plan in December 23, and their views alongside those of other stakeholders informed the final plan, which was endorsed by Cabinet on the 22nd of February and Council on the 6th of March. Commitments in the annual delivery plan 24-25 are reflected in the 16 service plans, which actually are provided for information in background papers to this report. And these plans show how the individual service areas will contribute to the achievements of the overall delivery of our 4 wellbeing objectives and how resources will be deployed to do so. Feedback from recent workshops, including the committee-specific presentation service, plan activities and performance targets in February 24 has been reflected in the approach to this year's reports. And the scrutiny committee members are asked to review the contributions from services through the planned activities and proposed performance measures and associated targets as relevant to the committee's remit that will support the achievement of our annual delivery plan for 24-25. Upon review, members are asked to comment to Cabinet the planned activities and associated targets as relevant to this committee's remit, as the primary means against which performance for the annual delivery plan will be monitored and measured and reported quarterly. As you know, we have consulted upon the wellbeing objectives as part of the annual programme for engagement work, and this has included the Let's Talk survey, the budget consultation, the annual delivery plan 24-25 consultations, and findings have shown that the overall majority of respondents, I should say, have agreed with our wellbeing objectives. As a result, going forward into 24-25, we are assured that our corporate plan wellbeing objectives and the associated commitments outlined in the annual delivery plan, which is also contained in the background papers of this report, are relevant in delivering the improved outcomes for Vale of Glamorgan citizens and contributing to the national wellbeing goals. Scrutiny committees will receive quarterly reports on the progress against the delivery of the annual delivery plan throughout 24-25, as has happened this year. Additionally, this year we will be organising focused reports aligned to our critical challenges of organisational resilience, cost of living crisis, and the climate and nature emergencies, which will be reported alongside these twice yearly. This will be in addition to the usual ADP progress updates, one of which we've had tonight, obviously. The service plans, which are also included in this report or as background papers, include service level activities that will contribute to both the annual delivery plan and our 5-year corporate plan commitments. Using this more integrated approach recognises that the annual delivery plan can contribute to multiple aspects of the corporate plan delivery, and by bedding a more interactive relationship between the ADP, the annual delivery plan, and the service plan, also enables the Council to demonstrate how service plan actions from a range of services contribute to the annual delivery plan. Our 16 service plans specifically identify how each head of service will contribute towards achieving our commitments and wellbeing objectives, and which wellbeing objective does the service contribute to, and what actions we will take to achieve these, and how we will manage our resources to achieve these actions and support that service. The plans identify a series of mitigating actions that reflect the key challenges facing the services in the coming years, and including risks, resources, workforce, finance, ICT, and assets. Under Appendix A, we've identified all the service level contributions as aligned to the remit of this committee to assist scrutiny members to consider all the planned activities for 24-25 against which progress will be monitored quarterly. All scrutiny committees will be presented with a single quarterly performance report to which each receiving an overview in the form of a presentation and progress made against their respective terms of reference. And it's worth noting that all 16 service areas where service plans have been produced will now be producing team plans 24-25 to underpin the delivery of the service plan priorities. The actions contained in the service and team plans will be translated into individual staff actions via the It's About Me staff appraisal process. So to conclude, members are asked to consider and review the planned service level activities for 24-25 relevant to this committee's remit as identified in Appendix A in terms of their contributions to the corporate plan commitments and wellbeing objectives, and recommend their endorsement to Cabinet. I don't intend going through each of those commitments individually. If anyone has any questions around any of those commitments from the service plans, I'm sure Emma and I will do our best to answer those questions, or if we can't, to actually come back or provide some answers to them in due course.
Thank you, Marcus. Councillor Perry, I assume that you wanted to come in on this because you've appeared on screen, but just to reiterate, if members have any questions either on the proposed process or the detailed actions which are set out before us in relation to the scrutiny committee, please just go ahead. So any questions or comments? Councillor Perry, were you wanting to ask a question? Because you've disappeared. No, well, if you want to come back in, please do. Otherwise, Councillor Hooper first, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mark. So just interested in digging into on ADP 13 and the co-working, shared working spaces. Be grateful for a view of how you think there's that we need extra provision of these. And I'm particularly concerned in case it actually steps on the toes of private providers who are already in the Vale providing the service at a private capacity, and how we're making sure that we don't take from their business. And the second thing is a comment, and it's in relation to the use of the word customer throughout this. And it concerns me, and it's always concerned me, that we try and treat the council as a business, and we're not a business. Customers will be able to choose where they go, and our residents can't do that. And it implies something that I'm not sure is the most appropriate. I'm not sure that that's something that you can necessarily talk to in this regard. It seems to be endemic within public service provision, and I think it's a shame. Thank you.
Yeah, just a comment, if I may, that ADP 13, which is review the future of our buildings and assets, the primary Scrutiny Committee, as is set out in the report, is Corporate Performance and Resources Committee. And I do think that the new reporting framework that's within us gives us an opportunity particularly to focus on those issues that are relevant for each committee. But nevertheless, as the report makes clear, there are some contributory actions identified which are relevant to this committee. But I think it's a point worth making. Marcus, are you able to respond to those comments? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, I think generally the point that's made there is that in some cases we will be looking at shared space across council departments. So where sort of different council departments have buildings that perhaps these could be opened up to use on a more shared basis with other council departments. But also looking at perhaps some of that portfolio, such as the Doc's office, for example, and other large buildings which perhaps are no longer going to be used by the council specifically, how we can look to make better use of those, whether that be through co-working or co-location. One thing to say is that we certainly wouldn't look to provide facilities which are already provided or if you like, over-provided in areas, and we would, before embarking on any project like that, seek to ensure that we were trying to fill a gap that existed rather than trying to tread on the toes of private business and actually push private business out, for example. You know, often in these situations, private business can provide space and business space more efficiently than the council, indeed. But there are areas where there are gaps, significant gaps, and actually sometimes we will work with private business to ensure that a facility which we may have, but is actually can be run by private business itself on an arrangement with the council. So those are the types of things we'd be looking at to deal with ADP 13. It's a bit of a broad gamut, and it doesn't just mean obviously providing space for private operators or private business. It means right across the piece, ensuring that we, one, make best use of our buildings, but two, where we have vacant, perhaps some vacant buildings or buildings which are underused, that we, if we can put them to better use, we do.
Thank you, Marcus. Councillor Champion, please.
Hi. Are these are all going to be RAG rated, are they, through the year?
Marcus?
Apologies, Chair. Yeah, yes, I would expect all of these to be RAG rated and assessed, and you know, obviously assessed against whether they're green, yellow, or green, amber, or red. So yes. Yeah,
it's going to be quite involved anyway. Okay.
I think just responding to that point, Councillor Champion, as I said before, I do think that this gives us an opportunity to really focus as a scrutiny committee on those matters that are specifically relevant to us. And my view is that it would be helpful for chairs of scrutiny committees and vice chairs to actually consider how best to ensure that there is a more focused discussion within scrutiny committees. I think that's particularly important for members of the public in terms of knowing which scrutiny committees are leading on which issues which are relevant to them. So I don't know if that needs to go back as a recommendation in terms of how we take this forward. But if committee are happy to endorse that approach, let's send that recommendation back, that chairs and vice chairs consider how best they can make use of the best use of this new approach. Is that something committee is happy to endorse? Councillor Hooper is agreeing. Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Any questions or comments from anyone else? Councillor Perry, thank you. Councillor Perry, we can see you, but we can't hear you. So if you switch your mic off.
Am I now working?
That's great.
Flipping this technology, yeah, I've had a few technical issues this evening, and I've now got perfect sound quality again by simply going out the meeting and coming back in. So I don't know what caused that. So some of what's been going through tonight has been driving me crazy. It's very Dalek-ish, but it's all crystal clear again. Wanted to come back, and I heard Councillor Hooper say something about the council not being a business, and I entirely agree with that. And I think that's something that needs to change, where we stop thinking about everything in terms of money and profit and actually start thinking again about our communities and the health and well-being of our current residents and that of the future generations. But yeah, thank you for Councillor Hooper for raising that.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Are there any comments or questions from anyone else? If I may, I had a question on ADP 1, which is deliver our public participation strategy. I know that's not specifically within the remit of this committee, but in terms of the contributory action identified, there's something in here about involving, engaging and consulting residents and other stakeholders in redesigning waste management arrangements. And I'm just interested to know more about how that might be happening. I don't know whether that's for Marcus or Emma, if she's still on the call.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, yes, Emma.
I am here. Yeah.
Thank you, Emma.
I had to go back out and come back in again as well. It was a bit weird. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Can I provide you with some additional details on that? Because there's a number of different activities, engagement activities that we're doing over the next year. So perhaps if I can provide a committee with a separate note on that.
That would be really helpful. Thank you, Emma. Thank you. So I see no other hands in relation to this report. Thank you so much, Marcus, for taking us through that so clearly. So just coming back to the recommendations, that members review and endorse via recommendations to Cabinet the planned service activities as they relate to the remit of this committee, that members review and endorse via recommendations to Cabinet the proposed measures and service performance targets for 24-25 relating to the remit of this committee. And as I say, we have one recommendation that will also go back about chairs and vice chairs meeting to consider how they take forward the new, or they support the new reporting framework. Other than that, can I move those recommendations? And Councillor Hooper will second it. Thank you very much. So that concludes our business this evening. So all that's left for me to do is thank you for your attendance and remind everybody that our next meeting is Tuesday, the 16th of April at the earliest start time of 5 o'clock. Just to explain, I've called an earlier meeting to accommodate an update on water quality from Dŵr Cymru Welsh Water and Natural Resources Wales. We'll also have an eagerly awaited report on bus services, and we should also have a reference from Cabinet on residential parking permits. So we can look forward to a busy and interesting discussion at next committee next month. But thank you all, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.